I am Paul Andrews, and I am about to share the story of how my ex-wife Sarah Ridgway Andrews' personal hygiene destroyed our marriage and family. We met on a blind date organized by mutual friends. She had just graduated from college and was working at First United National Bank, while I had started working at Allied Accounting. Our first date was not particularly exciting, but we did have a stimulating conversation about our career aspirations, which turned out to be very similar. We both came from middle-income families living in smaller communities than our current big city. I wanted to become an entrepreneur, while she wanted to have a stable life while climbing the corporate ladder. After a few months of dating, I discovered that Sarah was hiding a Playboy Playmate-worthy body under her heavy clothes. We found our love through a combination of great sex and a wonderful personal relationship built on admiration, trust, and caring for each other. We got married and had 2 children, Hannah and Miranda. Sex was great before and after we had kids, and we bought a starter home with a minivan. Sarah moved up the career ladder, taking on more responsibilities, while I was doing well at Allied Accounting and was given a leave of absence to get my CPA. One day, Mr. Carrot, the owner of Allied Accounting, advised me to leave the company before it was sold to a large accounting group and start my own practice. He warned me that the new owner would kill my entrepreneurial spirit and make me an unhappy person. I discussed this with Sarah, who advised me to remain an employee of the new company and forget about risky business. However, I decided to take the risk and start my own practice, working from home while building up a clientele. Things got tough as Sarah brought home a steady stream of money, while my contributions were inconsistent. I started investing more in my startup business, setting my personal income at Sarah's level and investing the excess amounts. I also started taking a share of the profits in potential deals instead of charging a consulting fee. This worked well for both parties, but Sarah was not happy with this arrangement. She did not like the fact that I was investing in startups and stopped talking to me about it. My accounting corporation's revenues were not where they should be, but I was building net worth. I had built a staff with deep knowledge and capabilities, which allowed me to spend more time with my children. However, Sarah decided that we needed a larger, nicer home to suit her status as a bank employee. She signed a contract to move without consulting me, which made me unhappy. Through my membership in the Chamber of Commerce, I became friends with several loan officers at Sarah's bank. They told me that she called me the little accountant, which disrespected me. This disrespect began to manifest itself at home in the form of snide remarks about how other accounting firms were doing while I seemed to be dozing. I was not invited to join her at the Christmas party or the summer party at the bank. It was time to talk to her about our relationship. I cornered her in the living room and asked her to sit with me for a few minutes. She looked at me with disgust and said it could wait. I told her that I needed to talk about this, but she ignored me. I didn't bring it up until the end of the day because I wanted to use it as an example of her ignoring me. My attempt to talk after the kids went to bed was cut short because she was tired. The next day, she snapped at me for bothering her all weekend and left to help her mom with her checkbook. Hours had passed when she entered the house and hurried to the kitchen to prepare dinner. I turned to her and said that I thought now was the right time to talk. She brought an indignant expression to her face and said that we were growing more and more distant from each other. I told her that we don't talk to each other like we used to, and that I feel like she doesn't respect me as a husband. She gritted her teeth and replied that now was not the time or place for this conversation. She pushed back her chair, took her plate to the kitchen, and left the house. I thought to myself that our conversation took less time than I expected. My daughters were shocked by this confrontation, but I calmly replied that no one was getting divorced. Sarah had once again shut me out by ignoring me for 30 hours after I asked to talk. I cleaned up the kitchen, did a little work in the office, and put the girls to bed. I went to the bedroom, thinking that if she didn't like it, she could sleep on the sofa. It was already close to midnight when she entered the bedroom, undressed, and walked over to the bed. I lifted the blanket so she could join me, and she pressed herself close to me. She said that she was not saying she was wrong, but she would try to treat me with the respect that she wanted from her husband. I hugged her and whispered that I thought it was wonderful and that I wanted to be the best husband for her. The situation in the house improved for a while, but a few years later, She was named Vice President of Regulatory Compliance. This meant studying and ensuring the bank's compliance with the rules and regulations of the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and the Comptroller of the Currency. She had the perfect philosophy for the role, but it was completely the opposite of mine. This caused discord in her family, but she didn't know about my investments, which were legal but not approved by fiscal officials like her. Around this time, she started going to bachelorette parties on Tuesdays. The longer she attended these events, the later she returned home. The children were already 16 and 14 years old, so they did not need a nanny, but they needed parental control and participation. I was always there for them, but one Tuesday evening, I heard swearing coming from the master bathroom. She stood at the sink and shouted that her damn wedding ring had fallen into the sink. I looked under the sink and saw an ordinary brown toilet paper box, which contained an enema set. I was surprised and alarmed, but I remained silent. I took a quick look at her and saw that she had retired to the bedroom and was putting on a sexy thong lingerie that I had never seen before. She tried to avoid me looking at the way she dressed and snapped that it was girls' night out, just like any other Tuesday. I went to the garage to get some pliers to remove the siphon, and she slipped out of the house without saying a word. Since the drain was on her half of the double sink, I had to move a bunch of her stuff under the sink before I could get to the trap. I was surprised when I saw the brown box and even more surprised when I looked inside and saw the enema set. I discovered that the enema nozzle was wet, which alarmed me. I sorted through the contents and found that everything was in its place. I took a pencil and marked it on the floor where the brown box stood. I wanted to see if it would be moved within the next week. I also took a photo of a couple of the items to see if she put the set back in the box the same way. She returned home around midnight, undressed, closed the bathroom door, and began to shower. I tried to pretend that I was sleeping, but if she touched my chest, she would find that my heart was beating like crazy. She flopped into bed hard enough that I felt like I had to act like I'd just woken up, and then I heard her giggle lightly. The next morning, I got up early mainly because I couldn't sleep. I took the precaution of closing the bathroom door before taking a shower. True, I wanted to check the brown box, and of course the box was moved. The douche tip was still wet, and the box was an inch off my line. Someone was having serious sex using a Ziploc bag. I carefully removed her smelly thong and sent it off to be tested for biological substances. Since I was an accountant, I was very familiar with what happens to the distribution of property in a divorce. I had conducted many assessments for husbands and wives in divorce, and I knew that Sarah would have a house until the girls went to college, and I would pay child support for them. However, I was not going to pay for a house where she could have fun with another guy while my girls were left unattended. Now that I had the information I needed, I began to create a plan of action. The key point for me was maintaining custody of my girls. I could always make money, and I had proven that I was a good father. Now, I needed to prove that she was a bad mother. Poor poison came to mind, not chemical but emotional. Sarah was a perfectionist and expected excellence from her employees and family. When something went wrong, it drove her crazy. The simplest problems became huge for her, and when she lost her temper, she became mean to her employees, me, and the children. I decided to use her poison to alienate my children so they would want to stay with me after the divorce. Then, the house and girls would remain with me quietly. I slipped over to her alarm clock and turned it off. She hates people who are late for work. After her late and obviously busy night, she might have liked to sleep a little longer. The children came for breakfast and asked where Mom was. I told them that she had arrived late and would probably sleep a little longer. They understood since they liked to sleep when they could. After watching the conversation she had on her cell phone late into the night, I pulled up the playlist of her videos and pressed play on mute. Hopefully, by the time she got up, the cell phone would be dead. She had a meeting with her staff on Wednesday morning, which she said was very important. An hour later, I heard a scream in my name. It turns out that it was my fault that she overslept after having sex with some guy late last night. I took the opportunity to hide from her screams by going into the garage. One of the tires had let out enough air to trigger the instrument warning light on her Lexus. She hates it when an alert blocks her screen, and she'll go crazy if she stares at the screen all the way to work. Hannah and Miranda did not escape her wrath. She rushed around the house trying to get dressed, do her hair, and put on makeup at the same time. While in the garage, I changed the door setting to lock so that it couldn't open the roller door as would be expected when leaving the garage. She touched the opening mechanism and did not notice that the door did not rise. She slammed backward into the garage door, crushing the two bottom panels. The three of us walked to the door and saw but did not hear a screaming woman hitting the steering wheel as she moved the Lexus forward. I straightened the panels and lifted the door, creating a terrible squeak. Sarah roared out of the garage, nearly missing a mailbox. This will be more fun than I thought. I wonder what she will do when she tries to call the office with a dead cell phone. The less I hear about her, the better. I hugged Hannah and Miranda and told them that Mom was a little stressed right now, and that she would be better when she got home tonight. She still loves you, but not so much me. After that, all three of us laughed. The alarm clock in our bedroom was now set to maximum volume. I let her make sure the alarm was on. Unlike my wife, I came to work on time this morning. My employees always know it's a good day when I walk in the door whistling. My good mood continued until 10 a.m. when my cell phone vibrated so loudly that it almost fell off the table. I thought it was my dear wife calling, but it was a shrill voice coming from the phone. She told me to get my ass over there and fix her tire. I almost died driving this dangerous car. If I had let her take the Mercedes I wanted, we wouldn't have this problem now. Fix it. I said casually that she had AAA insurance and that all she had to do was call them, and they would take care of it. She hung up on me. Since the morning had gone so well, I told my assistant that I had a few things to do and would be back after lunch. The first thing I did was go to a security store and buy some small cameras for the house and a voice recorder to hide in her purse. I needed to know my enemies and what they were doing. The next stop was returning home and setting up cameras in the living room and our bedroom. I made the panels in the garage usable but not pretty. They shouted some stupid things, backing into so that all the neighbors could see and grin. When I returned to work, I went through all my personal banking and investment files. We only had one joint credit card, and I canceled it. The only joint bank account was for household needs, so I left it open but reminded myself to make sure that half of it went into the account every payday. As usual, I got home before Sarah and was preparing dinner when I heard the garage door creak and groan as it opened. The FBI couldn't have knocked down the door any harder than Sarah did. Both girls sitting at the kitchen table screamed, and the witch came up to me very menacingly. She said that she'd never had such a shitty day and that she was going upstairs to take a soak in her bath. The girls and I had a quiet dinner, whispering like 12-year-old children. I went upstairs and asked her if she wanted to have dinner, and she threw a bar of soap at me and growled that if she wanted to have dinner, she would have told me. Now leave me alone. This was the perfect time to make a small slit in her purse and place the recorder inside the lining. I went downstairs and fell asleep on the sofa in the living room. I didn't want to end up in the same bed with her when her alarm clock went off at full volume tomorrow morning. The explosion of the latest rap song on the alarm clock radio, preceded by a shrill scream from my wife, followed by the screams of two terrified teenagers, was unlikely to be surpassed by any U.S. Marine sergeant in the early morning. While Sarah was thrashing around in the bathroom, I took the opportunity to go to the garage and smear the dark brown grease from my lawnmower on the seat of her car. After she sits on this lubricant on the way to work, others may think that she shat herself, literally, not figuratively. We received the same amount of bile and rage from her as the night before. I also smeared the skirt she was wearing the day before, just to be convincing and hope that there would be someone to blame it on. Her assistant Linda, who was married to one of my friends, called me and told me about how Sarah discovered her stained skirt. She told me that Hurricane Sarah had gained strength, and everyone should be on alert over the next few days. I stopped tormenting her, and all sorts of little things began to happen. For example, one of the 2 diamond earrings left on the table disappeared. The dress she wore last Tuesday had a red wine stain that she didn't remember having. The lining on her favorite shoes began to peel off. Since I knew where her password book was, many of the sites she used refused her entry. When she drove her Lexus, turned a corner, or pressed the brake, a ball from a bearing would roll around in the door of her car. Every day or so, something little could go wrong for her. It was death by 1,000 cuts, and we were now at the 500th level. On Tuesday, after work, She returned home to change clothes and go to a bachelorette party. She didn't say a word to anyone in the house and made sure the bathroom door was locked before undressing. Everything was the same as the previous Tuesday, including the wet enema tip. Everything was exactly the same, except that I was following her using the locator on her mobile phone. According to her cell phone locator, her first stop that evening was Bonefish Grill. From Bonefish, she went to the dance bar O'Hara's. I wasn't interested in what she did in the club. I was interested in who she left with. I had been monitoring her movements from the house, so I got out and started driving up to the area to follow her to her next location. Just as I was finishing my coffee in the parking lot, Sarah and some guy walked out holding hands. They hugged each other and kissed for a long time before going their separate ways. He left in his car and she followed. I kept up with them for a block, leaving the locator to do its job. The money bags were dragged to motel number 6, located near the highway. From the street, I saw that they entered a room with an external entrance. Since they would be there for a couple of hours, I pulled into the parking lot and wrote down the make, model, and license plate number of her boyfriend's car. While in a dark parking lot, I let enough air out of the driver's side front tire to make it noticeable and again send a low tire pressure signal to the dash. There was a truck in the parking lot, so I found a piece of grease and put it on the windshield. I knew perfectly well that the first thing she would do was turn on the wipers, and then the entire windshield would turn into a blurry mess. It will be interesting to listen tomorrow to what was recorded on the voice recorder in her purse. The information I needed would now be in my hands, and I was only halfway to my goal of blowing it up. After 1 o'clock in the morning, she entered the bedroom, undressed, and went into the bathroom, slamming the door. It was probably time for her to shower and do whatever she didn't touch her alarm clock or phone that night. I wanted these events to appear random. A couple of hours later, when she was already snoring, I crawled out of bed and took the recorder out of her purse. I loaded it into my laptop, charged it, and put it back in her purse. The next morning, when Sarah and the girls were not at home, I listened to the recording. It was noisy at dinner at the club, but the voice recorder was quite effective at capturing the activity at Motel 6. I found out that her boyfriend's name was Keith, and they both enjoyed each other. I also learned that they partied every Tuesday night and spent every other Thursday at the Hyatt during business hours. It was Sarah's turn to book a room at the Hyatt, and they laughed at the conservative bank president for his unknowing complicity. They used their corporate cards to pay for luxury sex at the Hyatt. Since the bank's main office was located near the Hyatt, they often used its services to meet with bank employees from other cities. Sarah planned to divorce her little accountant husband right after her daughter Miranda left for college. She loved her girls but didn't want to spend the best years of her life chasing soccer balls with them. Keith was the best mom in the world, and she was glad he did it. She didn't know why, but she just couldn't be around him anymore. She had tried everything to make him more successful, but he just wanted to be an ordinary guy with no goals. He was just wasting his life. If she didn't like him that much, why didn't she divorce him right now, make him pay alimony, and spend more time with Keith? Giggling, she said that if she got divorced and received alimony, she would still have to pay for childcare, a maid, and a cook. Now, her weakling did it for free and brought money into their joint account. She didn't have to pay as many household expenses, plus she could hide a significant portion of her salary somewhere where he wouldn't be able to find it in the divorce. She used it for household expenses while building her secret stash. Speaking of divorce, when was he going to pull the trigger on his frigid wife? That date, my dear, was carved in stone. Her father required him to sign a prenup before their marriage. He signed only when they added a validity period of 20 years. 3 more years, and he would get 50% of her multi-million-dollar stock portfolio. Laughing, she said that the timing was perfect. His prenuptial agreement would end around the time Miranda went to college, and then they could both leave. After hearing this conversation, I could not believe that there were such selfish and treacherous people on earth. They deserved each other and would have a terrible time together as they both tried to deceive each other sexually and financially. They were worried about their safety and alternated weeks booking a room at the Hyatt Hotel so that neither of them rented a room more than once a month. However, her vile and disrespectful behavior was still obvious to both me and the girls. As expected, The report showed that traces of biological origin were found on those thongs. Now, I had enough evidence to go to a lawyer and start filing the divorce papers. I told Jeff Green, my lawyer, to ask for full custody of the girls since I had most of the contact with them. Judging by the way their mother acted, it would be lucky if the girls even wanted to communicate with her. Jeff said he would add this, but that it would be difficult. I proposed a plan where the house would be split 50-50ths until it was sold after both girls left for college. We would both keep our own investments in retirement funds. Since I limited my taxable income to about the same as hers, neither of us would have to pay child support. She must pay me regular child care benefits, including college tuition. We saved enough for tuition, housing, books, and food, but not enough for outings, etc. When she became a full-time vice president, she enrolled in the bank's deferred compensation program. I would leave this account alone in case she wanted my partnership investment. Then, I would remember her deferred compensation to fend off her demand. In preparation for my divorce, I began removing important things from the house and putting them into storage. I also backed up my computer every day to an external hard drive, keeping it separate from the computer. I planned to keep the house, but I didn't know how violent Sarah would be when she received the summons. On the recommendation of my lawyer, I hired a private investigator to find out who Keith was and where he worked. To speed up the search, I gave him the information I had about the license plate number. Every year, at the end of the third quarter of the financial year, the bank begins the process of drawing up a budget for the next year. All employees fill out questionnaires, and each department must reevaluate its work in the budget. At the end of this process, the senior management team hosts a formal dinner program dance at the Hyatt Hotel. It's a tuxedo and evening gown event for senior executives and their spouses, with many of those in attendance booking a room at the Hyatt Hotel. Sarah told me about this event many years ago, but by the time she became a member of this group, I had been deemed unworthy. She constantly reminded me about this event, and if I had been more successful, I might have been able to participate in it next year. She thought it would motivate me, but I didn't care. I was tired of these people. Almost daily, I searched her closets and drawers for other information about her infidelity. A week before the celebration, I found a new shoe box that had been pushed into the farthest corner of her closet. I always started looking there, in the depths of a closet or drawer. It was a pair of very fashionable Jimmy Choo evening shoes. There was no receipt, so I used Google and got slapped. These shoes cost over $1,000. Since the meeting was in a few days, I had to think about how to counter this. Replacing the Choo shoes with an old beat-up pair of yard boots or a pair of Crocs came to mind. Instead, I took the shoes into the shop, placed the heel in a bench vise, and very carefully turned the tall, narrow heel to the side a few degrees. The shoes were rewrapped and placed in exactly the same place. After I found her brown box, I received a lesson in how to handle delicate items. The day before the celebration, the investigator called me and asked me to come to his office as he had some information. After sitting me down, he told me that her lover was Keith Miller, a senior loan officer at the bank where Sarah worked. I thought it could have a serious impact on their careers. They didn't report to each other, but her main responsibility was to make sure the credit department was compliant with rules and regulations. This was on top of the no sexual relations policy between employees. They were on thin ice. Great information, I told him, and could he set up some cameras at the senior management meeting at the Hyatt on Friday night? He already had a photograph of Sarah, and I asked him to film her walking and dancing. We were both happy. He received another check, and I received truly reliable information to consummate our marriage. The movie I saw on Friday night was absolutely hilarious, so much so that the detective was laughing the whole time we were watching it. She walked like she was drunk. The pressure of her entire weight on that tiny end point of the heel, which was offset a few degrees, pushed her legs outward, causing her to stumble. She crashed into tables and chairs. At one table, 2 bottles of red wine were knocked over. Everyone was laughing. I planned to submit it to America's Funniest Videos as soon as Sarah signs the release, of course. Sarah and Keith retreated to his room to have sex all night long. Everything was documented with a tiny video camera slipped under the hotel door. Isn't it wonderful how technology has improved our lives over the past few years? Even though Sarah returned home before noon on Saturday, we didn't see her until late Sunday morning. Spiritually, she should have gone to church that morning, but she stayed home. Sarah used to always come home from work on Wednesday afternoons tired. I assumed this was due to her late classes on Tuesday nights. She entered the house and immediately went into the bath. This Wednesday was different. I was going to change the amount of hot water in her bath. She growled as it seemed to her hello while walking to the bathroom. I waited while she found the right combination of hot and cold water for the bath on the tap. I heard the sink start working, realized that she was washing, and went into the utility room in our house. Separate water lines are connected to each faucet, and there is a manifold on the wall that regulates the amount of water in each line. I quickly turned off the hot water line in the bathroom and let the cold water fill the tub. As soon as I heard the water stop flowing into the tub, I turned the hot water valve back on. A terrible sound of horror came from the lips of my beloved wife as she slipped into the cold water bath. Of course, the bubbles made the water slippery, and she floundered, trying to grab onto something to pull herself out of the cool water. When I rushed into the bathroom to help her, she ripped the towel rack completely off the wall in an attempt to get out. I had to crawl under the cold water again. It was the hardest thing I could do not to laugh out loud. Finally, I pulled her out, cursing, slipping, trembling, and drenched in water. Of course, she slapped me because she didn't have hot water. Howling, both girls ran into the bathroom and saw their naked mother having another fit. She then lashed out at her daughters. "It's all your fault. You've used up all the hot water because of you. I couldn't get the relaxation I needed so much. Damn you." She stomped into the bedroom to get dressed, and the girls burst into tears. They rushed to her to tell her that they had not used hot water, but she shouted at them to shut up. "I don't want to listen to any excuses. Get out of my sight," which they did, running away crying. It's worse than I thought. I didn't think she would rush at them for me, yes, but not for them. I made a real mistake in thinking about where her anger would go. Then she turned to me. "What the hell are you looking at? Goat, fix my bathtub. Do you think you can do at least one simple thing in my house?" I led her to the bathtub and turned the hot water back on. She was very hot. I took her hand, sprinkled hot water on her, and said, "You have a lot of hot water." I looked at her for a few seconds without saying anything and then went to dinner with the girls somewhere else. The dinner I was cooking. The girls were sobbing, and I stopped the car a few blocks away to console them. I told them I'm really sorry you had to listen to that tirade. You don't deserve this. You are wonderful children, and I am very proud of you. Please forgive your mother for her actions and forgive me for allowing this to happen. Forgive me for this. This seemed to calm them down and reminded me that I had to be careful how I separated the three of us from Sarah. It was too much fun torturing her. By the time we made it back to the house, it was time to go to bed. I left the kitchen utensils in place and lay down on the sofa in the living room. In the middle of the night, I felt a presence, as if something evil was approaching me, and so it happened. Sarah stood and looked at me. Yes, that was the only sound I could make. She just stood there. Finally, she said, "I shouldn't have yelled at the girls like that. It's not their fault. I must have turned the wrong knob. Over the past month, I have been so overwhelmed and upset about so many things. Flat tires, garage doors, faulty evening shoes. Every little thing irritates me to the extreme. I need to get my life back on track." Having said this, she turned and went back upstairs. I think that's all she wanted to tell me. The following week, I received a real gift. One of my investment partners had a 2-bedroom apartment in Breckenridge, Colorado, and wanted to see if I would be interested in renting it. It was the week between Christmas and New Year, and the contract was signed for a year, but the tenants were forced to refuse. So, my friend left a deposit and offered to rent it to me at half price. I told him I would call him back. The girls were despondent after being cursed by their mother. Sarah apologized to them, but her harsh words still stuck in their minds and feelings. I asked them if they would join me for a week of skiing in Breckenridge. I think so because they rushed towards me as fast as they could, kissing me on the cheek and hugging me. That evening, I booked plane tickets to Denver and back for the 4 of us. I was going to give Sarah one last chance to save our marriage by being together as a family. I paid extra to be able to cancel the ticket. Sarah returned home, cleaned herself up, got dressed, and went down to dinner. I asked one of the girls to ask her mother if she would like to join us on a ski trip. They chose Hannah because she couldn't sit still and would have spilled the beans anyway. Hannah said, "Mom, Dad rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Breckenridge between Christmas and New Year. Can you find some time to join us? This will be a lot of fun." Sarah smiled and started to say something, but then she got lost and thought about what I didn't know. Then her eyebrows rose, and a smirk appeared on her lips. "I would love to, honey, but it's the end of the year, and it's very important for the bank that on December 31st, all the money is accounted for correctly. For this, I must stay in the city. I'm really sorry." I was sorry too. Sorry that Hannah was disappointed. Sorry that Sarah refused the invitation with a lame, weak explanation. The compliance department has nothing to do with a bank's year-end balance sheet or income statement. Not the slightest. The compliance department has no money to balance. You don't have to be a financial controller to know this. The reason for the raised eyebrows and smirk was that she saw it as a chance to spend 7 nights in her bedroom with that Keith. The following week, my private investigator switched the cameras to Wi-Fi so I could have instant access to them while I was in Colorado. A scene was about to take place at home that I really wanted to see. Not the one where 2 adulterers have fun, but something else. The day we left for Colorado, I lubricated her enema tip with jalapeno pepper juice. If she wanted hot sex, she was gonna get it. When we left for the airport, Sarah was a pleasant mother and said, "Be careful," and hugged them. I appreciated her short hug and kiss. I told her, "I love you, Sarah," and received a quick answer, "I love you too." The plane ride and rental car ride to the condominium were uneventful. Hannah and Miranda had never been to the Rocky Mountains and went out onto the deck to enjoy the view and see of the pine trees faster. I set up my computer and connected to the Wi-Fi camera in our house. As expected, Sarah arrived at the house at 6 o'clock in the evening and immediately headed to the main bathroom for a ritual. I didn't need a camera in the bedroom. I wasn't interested in watching them fuss. I could see the landing, the living room, and the kitchen. Suddenly, Sarah stumbled down the stairs and howled as if she were on fire. Apparently, she discovered that her life-saving tube of Preparation H was also tainted by jalapeno juice. Her face was bright red and contorted in pain. I thought about how much fun my private investigator would have had watching this. Well, I guess her lover Keith won't be a welcome guest today. I wonder how long it will take her to recover. It would be a shame if they couldn't have sex for the entire week while the kids and I were gone. The 3 of us headed into the Christmas-decorated and well-lit downtown Breckenridge to get some pizza. What a beautiful place with a foot of snow on everything. After eating the pizza, we started walking back to the condo when the girls heard some music they liked and figured out where it was coming from. It was a teen club designed to provide entertainment for teenagers while parents had fun elsewhere. "Dad, can we come in for a few minutes?" Hannah asked. I happily agreed because over the past couple of months, these girls have been through a lot. The dance floor was crowded, and the sounds of laughter were inviting. The girls wanted to stay, but I wasn't going to leave them alone on their first night in a new city. Finding a free table away from the DJ, I asked my daughters to come and check on me from time to time. This was perfect for me as I could read my email without worrying about girls ignoring me. It didn't take long for them to attract the boys and start dancing, laughing, and talking. They would look back at me, and I would raise my Diet Coke to let them know everything was okay. There were many adults there watching their children. One woman on the other side of the dance floor was very attractive, and as we both scanned the floor for our children, we caught each other's eyes and smiled. This attractive woman had 2 boys who came to her table for money, food, or soda. My girls seemed to spend more time hanging out with them rather than playing on the field. After I finished writing the message, I looked up and saw an attractive woman walking towards me. All the other men were watching her too. She was wearing ski pants that seemed to be sprayed so thin you could see the freckles on her butt. The sweater was also form-fitting, and she radiated warmth despite the temperature outside being below freezing. She stopped at my table. "You must be Hannah and Miranda's father. Why don't you come and join the rest of your family instead of staying here alone?" I tried not to jump up but answered with great pleasure. My girls are good judges of people, so I guess that's why they sit at your table. My name is Donna, and Zach and Michael are my two boys, 16 and 14 years old, who are not long before they turned 21. I smiled. They are the same age as my girls. Coincidence? And we both laughed. In the time I've been watching your girls, Donna said, and then interacting with them, they are very sweet children. You should be proud of them. Of course, I'm proud. I can also say that your boys look very well behaved, or is it just because you're looking after them? Donna laughed. You are very observant. I'm glad there is a father here who watches his children with the same interest as I do. I work from home, so I am the one who sends them off in the morning and meets them when they come home. They get a lot of attention because they are now the most important part of my life. For Donna and the boys, as well as for us, it was the first day in Breckenridge. It didn't take long for the 4 teenagers to decide where and when they would ski tomorrow morning. Donna and I made some adjustments so that we would celebrate them at different times. We decided that tomorrow morning we would see off the skiers, then we would go together for breakfast, and we would ski late in the morning and in the afternoon. Over the next week, Donna and I learned a lot about each other, and we both liked what we heard. It was nice to talk to her about my problems with Sarah and my plan to divorce her. I didn't reveal that I was pursuing her and made it easier for myself to get custody of the girls. I wasn't very proud of it, but it would have been the best thing for the girls to be with me and not with that selfish. Donna has been a widow since her husband was killed by a drunk driver 2 years ago. We both had trouble forgiving people who changed our lives. Just talking to an understanding person was helpful for us. On our last night, Donna and I had dinner together without our teenagers. We spent the last half hour of the evening making out on the couch when the kids weren't around. By the end of the week, we came to the conclusion that we needed to spend more time together. All 4 teenagers shared the same opinion. It was time to end my marriage with Sarah. When we returned home, Sarah looked tired and exhausted. Maybe she should have gone to Colorado with the rest of the family. We had a great time. After watching My Hot Wife, our first night in Colorado, I didn't need to watch what was going on in my house. It didn't make the slightest difference to me. I told Jeff to get all the paperwork done and submit it to the bank. The girls took the news of our divorce as I expected. They saw that over the past 6 months, my relationship with Sarah had collapsed. They compared my interactions with Donna to the bitterness that existed between me and their mother. Hannah is the only one who approached the main topic. What will happen to Miranda and me now? Where will we go? I hugged both girls and said, "From the day you were born, you were my whole world, and this will continue for the rest of my life." In the divorce proceedings, I asked for full custody of both of you, and the 3 of us will remain in this house. You will study at the same school with the same friends. I will continue to prepare food for you and be there for you. You will be able to see your mother as often as you want. I continued, you will have the opportunity to choose who you will live with during the divorce procedure. Whoever gets custody of you will also get the house until you both go to college. It will be your decision, but remember, whoever you decide to live with, both your mom and I love you. In any case, you will remain in this house and in your school. Don't tell me now who you want to stay with. This is an important decision, and you have a lot of time before you have to choose. Now, please use my car and go out to dinner so Mom and I can talk. You don't want to see or hear our conversation today. Fine, they said after finishing my conversation with the girls. I looked at my phone to see who had called and texted so many times while we were talking. I guessed who it was. Instead of sending the message to voicemail, I decided to call Sarah. The very first words I heard from her did not contain hello. Her swearing melted the plastic of my phone. I let her rant, rage, threaten, and scream until she ran out of air. It would be impossible to get a word in anyway, so I let her growl. Finally, she caught her breath. Why did you do this to me? Why don't you love me anymore? Especially after everything I've done for you. The girls? Why don't you come to the house and discuss this? A click was all I heard. She must be on her way here. Before I had time to come to my senses, she burst through the door, rushed towards me with a growl and shouted, "Why?" I calmly replied, "You've been cheating on me with Keith Miller every Tuesday night for I don't know how long. How did you think this would end?" I gave you a chance to start over by moving to Colorado, but you decided that Keith was more important than your family. You made a choice. Now, you have to pay the consequences. Sarah, you need to move everything you need from home, move to a hotel while we sort everything out. I won't take your things out into the yard and burn them today. You can see the girls whenever you want. After you check into the hotel, find yourself a lawyer and find out what I offer in divorce. I think that's fair, but you need to decide what you want to do. In the meantime, don't bother me except to coordinate your appointments with the girls or getting your things. From now on, we have nothing to talk about except our divorce. I went to my office, closed the door, and began to listen to suitcases slamming against any vertical or horizontal surface. What I didn't hear was crying, and that was sad. I knew I never wanted to be with her again. Apparently, the feeling was mutual. The process of changing locks and resetting codes and passwords was next on my to-do list. She was furious during the divorce proceedings. It's not that she still loved me and wanted to save the family. It seemed like she wanted it to be her who faded against me, not me who faded against her. She wanted everyone to know that she kicked out the weak accountant because he wasn't good enough for her, not me who kicked her out for cheating. She was professionally embarrassed that I filed for divorce. Neither of us had any desire to attend marriage counseling. We were done with each other. All the good things we had over the years were squeezed out of us. I was very lucky that I was able to get a divorce, unlike many other men. First of all, Hannah and Miranda decided that they wanted to live in a house with their father. They saw their mother once a week or two, but they didn't like her asking questions about me and if I missed her. I had very little contact with her and was usually not around when she picked up or dropped off the girls. Sarah disliked me and my little accounting company so much that she wanted no part of it. She wanted to keep her 401k account and defer compensation funds, which she thought I didn't know about. She has to pay for childcare, and the bank's health insurance is better than mine. I didn't want her to know that I knew about dating at the Hyatt. It was planned to be used later. She took all the furniture she considered stylish from the house, allowing us 3 unsophisticated people to take what was left of it. Sarah left all the family photos as if we treated them like shrines dedicated to her. I'm sure she had other funds hidden, but I didn't care. I needed my children and my business. They were my priority, and everything related to her was in the background. Someone anonymously sent videos of Keith having sex with Sarah. Keith's wife, of course, caused an immediate increase in legal costs throughout the city. The traders gathered in an elite apartment in a fashionable part of the city. I wonder how they will get along outside of sexual games after the divorce. I invited Donna and the boys to my place for the weekend. There was no sex between us as we tried to set an example for our children, but that doesn't mean we didn't spend time kissing and hugging. She was the best medicine to forget how badly my marriage ended. We both knew where our relationship was going. She already had a place to stay. We have no problems yet, but we have 2 16-year-olds who enjoy each other's company and sleep in adjacent bedrooms. These 2 need our constant attention. Donna was a registered nurse and worked from home for a health insurance company doing medical claims research. So, I created the perfect office for her in my home. A year later, I contacted a friend of mine who worked for a CPA firm auditing a bank. I told him a story about how 2 senior bank employees used bank credit cards for illicit dates during work hours. He thanked me for the tip and, after conducting an audit, brought this issue up for consideration by the bank president. The bank did not want to publicly open a criminal case for fraud, but both employees were fired. The bank also contacted its insurance company and informed them of the theft. Currently, the bond company is pursuing Sarah and Keith to recover the bank's losses. The company refused to allow Sarah and Keith to continue working together, essentially denying them the opportunity to work in banking across the country. After Sarah lost some of her retirement investment, the couple moved out of their fancy apartment. The company that provided the bonds is suing for damages for bank credit card fraud. Keith's financial problems are compounded by the fact that his wife and children will take a significant portion of his income when he finds work again. It's a pity that he didn't wait for the marriage contract. Sarah works as a paralegal in the office of a divorce lawyer. She has learned a lot about the legal and social implications of divorce and is very helpful to her clients. After counseling other people about divorce all day, she retreats to her small apartment and mentally berates herself for how tragically her own marriage ended. She doesn't seem to be attracted to the successful businessmen and doctors she thought she should have married instead of me. The market value of my worthless investments at the end of the year was more than $2 million. It looks like it will be a good year, especially since my wedding to Donna is scheduled for mid-June.